Chapter 17. Robert Matthews. Elk Schultz wanted her husband remembered. After his funeral, she asked Warden Matthews if he would erect a memorial to Schultz at the prison. Matthews agreed at once. Schultz was an excellent and outstanding lieutenant. His death is a big loss, he said. Later, after more details about Schultz's private life surfaced, Matthews adopted a no-comment policy towards his former lieutenant. When the hothouse guards learned Matthews was having inmates make a display case for some of Schultz's personal effects, they were furious. We have had officers killed in the line of duty right here inside this penitentiary, and the Bureau has never done anything for them, the employee union president griped. And now the Bureau is putting up a memorial for this guy who was killed by one of his own kids he abused. And now the Bureau is putting up a memorial for this guy who was killed by one of his own kids he abused. Why, you bet we're angry. Rumors swept through the prison. Some claimed the Bureau had known for years that Schultz beat his children. Others accused Matthews of honoring Schultz simply because they were both black. Such gossip was untrue and unfair, but it didn't matter. The guards at the hothouse were furious. Schultz had embarrassed them. If there was one accusation that every guard hated, it was the age-old bugaboo that a guard really wasn't much different from an inmate. Former Bureau Director Norman Carlson had spent years trying to change the public's perception of guards as sadistic knuckle-draggers. Carlson had stressed professionalism, required intensive training, and fired guards suspected of brutality. It was Carlson who abandoned the Bureau's police-style uniforms, replacing them with gray slacks, white shirts, red ties, and black blazers, the sort of look that a junior executive might adopt. Suddenly, Schultz's death seemed to cancel all that. Everyone was talking about the hothouse lieutenant whose kids had killed him. Of course, the worst razzing came from the inmates. Hey, I might be a thief, but I don't beat my kids. Now, the new warden was compounding the problem. He was going to set up a memorial to Schultz, a daily reminder that every guard would see. But despite the complaints, Matthews could not change his mind. A special wooden case for Schultz's cap, some of his papers, and the flag that had draped over his coffin was placed in the second-floor hallway of the administration building. A few days later, several employees shoved the case into a corner of an office where it was left to gather dust. Matthews' decision to memorialize Schultz had strained his relations with the guard force. Rather than move to heal the wound, the new warden cut deeper. He continued to push his two priorities: better communication between staff and inmates, and improved sanitation. As Matthews stood in the dining room listening to inmates complain, a guard remarked, "Look at that fool, listening to those crybabies." Later, when Matthews walked through a cell house and told guards that he wanted several scuff marks removed from the floor, another guard grumbled, "He wants us to be maids, not officers." Complaining about the warden became a normal pastime at Benny's after work, just like flirting with the blonde barmaid. The problem with Matthews, most agreed, was that he was nothing like his predecessor. Warden Jerry O'Brien had spent 5 years running the hothouse before he retired, and O'Brien had been popular. Within the Bureau, he had been considered the last of the great dinosaur wardens, those hard, no-nonsense, bear-shaped wardens who had worked their way up from the guard force. He would bulldoze right over you if you didn't stand up for yourself, Associate Warden Richard Smith recalled. But once you showed some backbone, you were okay. The staff called it becoming O'Brienized. O'Brien had worked nearly every job there was in a prison, joining the Bureau directly out of high school and gradually climbing the ladder to Washington headquarters, where he had served as Carlson's top troubleshooter. Whenever there was allegations of staff corruption or brutality, it was O'Brien who was sent to investigate. Whenever there was a riot, O'Brien was sent to clean up the mess. Being named Warden of Leavenworth was O'Brien's payoff for 15 years of dedicated service, and to him, there was no better job. Guards at Leavenworth could watch O'Brien stroll through the rotunda and identify with him. O'Brien knew what it was like to wrestle an inmate to the floor, and his philosophy was similar to that of most guards. The hothouse didn't exist to rehabilitate inmates. Its purpose was to keep the bastards locked up. Guards had a tough time identifying with Matthews. He had never been a guard, had never wrestled down any inmates. Matthews had joined the Bureau as a caseworker who helped prisoners with their family legal problems, in guards' parlance, a weak sister. He not only had been to college, but also had finished graduate school. Worst of all, he called inmates our customers. The hothouse had never had a warden quite like him. The fact that Matthews had never worked as a guard was significant at the hothouse, because guards held a special status, not only inside the prison, but also in the community. It was the guards who made the prison function, and in the town of Leavenworth, federal guards were accorded the sort of respect common to lawyers and doctors. Before there was even a state of Kansas, there was a prison in Leavenworth, the Oklahoma Territorial Jail, built just south of town. Wild West desperados from the Kansas-Oklahoma Indian Territories who were not gunned down at high noon or lynched were brought to the jail by frontier marshals. When Kansas was admitted to statehood in 1861, the territorial jail became the foundation for the Kansas State Penitentiary and a maximum security prison that today holds nearly 2,000 men. In 1874, Leavenworth got its second prison, another maximum security penitentiary, this one at the Army's Fort Leavenworth, north of the town. Today it holds 1,400 inmates and is the only military prison in the nation. The hothouse, built between the fort and the town, was the community's third prison. It was followed in 1915 by yet another state penitentiary, originally built for women. On any given day, some 6,000 convicts are housed in the Leavenworth area. Because prisons dominate the region's economy, the hothouse alone generates $15 million per year through purchases and staff salaries. Because prisons dominate the region's economy, the hothouse alone generates $15 million per year through purchases and staff salaries. It isn't uncommon for local boys to work as guards directly at a high school. Many of these youngsters plan never to leave Leavenworth, and this has created a hardship for them when they are hired at the hothouse. The Bureau believes in transferring guards whenever they start getting promotions. That way, they don't have to supervise their former buddies, and the Bureau has an easier time rotating employees in and out of unpopular outposts. But while this seems like good management, it has created a tier system at the hothouse that has badly divided the staff. The guards who don't want to leave town are forced to turn down promotions and remain on the bottom level of the payroll, regardless of the years of experience. Guards who are willing to move every 2 years are regarded as transients without ties to the Leavenworth community.